Hi, welcome to this mini repertoire against London with c6, with 2 c6. So d4, knight f6, bishop f4, and now c6. And after e3, we are going with queen b6, attacking this b2 pawn. We talked about the move b3 in the previous video, and now we are going to check out the move queen c1. Now first thing, so queen c1 you see here is the second most popular move. But one thing I'm going to say, I personally think it's far less convincing for white than b3. With queen c1 you're kind of putting the queen in a passive spot, and you are leaving this diagonal here. Usually white has a lot of play on the light squares here, using his queen, his bishop, his knight. And here you're just moving the queen away from this nice diagonal. So I think that means that most attacks, typical attacks or attacking positions white has, are far less effective. For example, here the queen leaves this diagonal, and now we can immediately jump knight h5. And if bishop to g3, then we can just take out the bishop. And after h6, g3, we're going to play our usual g6. Now, if knight to f3, then just bishop g7, knight d2, let's say. And now we are going to play d6, covering some squares here, and maybe getting ready to play e5. Let's say c3, the typical triangle setup that London players love so much. Castles. And here, if knight c4, then we can just drop the queen back to c7. If bishop to d3, then we can also prophylactically go with the queen to d7. And if e4 here, then we go c5. We try to improve this bishop on g7. And if d5, then white will kind of block his own pieces. I suppose he's worse here, but probably only slightly worse. Yeah, so not so good for white. So knight d7, queen c2. Here we can reroute the knights. And after castle slung, black always has to be careful for this very quick b5, b4 ID. So rook b8 to reinforce it even more. King b1, since the king, I guess, doesn't like to be on that c file. So b5, and this is very good for black, since well, you could, I guess, double up rooks. That's probably the most logical thing to try for white, but it doesn't. So first of all, here you can just take on f2. Obviously, I would say you could. I was going to say you can just take this, but so yeah. So here you'd have to defend it, and we can just play bishop d7, connect the rooks, bring all our pieces to the queen side here, and I guess just attack the white king. So let's go back to after h6, g3 and g6. White could also try knight to d2, then again bishop g7, knight f3, d6, and all of this stuff is pretty similar. If c3, then bishop g7, knight d2, castles, knight f3, d6. So this is always a nice square to drop back to. If bishop d3, white might have some ideas of putting a lot of pressure here on the king side, but this setup is extremely solid and not so easy to break. So here queen c7, sorry, getting out of any knight c4 tempi. Queen c2, you see, making this battery here, trying to make something happen, but just knight e7, knight e4, and the knight jumps in. Bishop takes f6, here again rook b8, and here we go king g7 to be able to bring the rook in. If rook to h1, then rook to h8, protecting the pawn, and well, not much is happening here. So let's see what happens after queen b6. Right, we had queen c1, knight h5. So yeah, if bishop e5, I suppose we can just go d6, and this doesn't change anything. In fact, we got a tempo for free, I guess. And if bishop takes b8, rook takes b8, well, c4, so white wants to gain some space, I suppose. Let's see if we can include some more games. Yeah, let's say knight c3, I suppose. I guess white might try to push this d5 pawn. It's not so good at the moment, since we can just block it and prevent the pawn from advancing. And if bishop takes d3 or knight takes f3, we just castle. Bishop e2, and here we can even consider giving up the bishop to weaken these pawns. This bishop isn't the greatest block behind the pawns. We have maybe some outpost on e4. So here, after castles, let's play some random moves then. Right, so here white is already in trouble, since these rooks are short on squares. So yeah, as you can see, not the most threatening approach for white. So bishop takes b8. Let's say bishop e2, then we can just drop back and go on with our business as usual. It will all be very similar to lines you've already seen. So knight c3, d6, castles, I guess castles as well, yeah. Yeah, rook b1 seems logical, but now we can in fact take this diagonal. So maybe here, let's go back a few moves, maybe here bishop d3 actually makes some sense for white as well. So here g6 I guess is possible, d6 is also fine. We can just leave this knight here since there is no attack. So g6, let's say castles. Let's say bishop g7, c4, and here again we can break in the center with e5, and well, we are enjoying a pretty good position. So as you can see, after queen c1, we can immediately make use of this empty diagonal to go to jump with our knight to h5. White has a couple of moves. The most popular, obviously, is bishop to g3, like the London players have been trained, I guess. Often works out for them, and it's interesting to note that in this variation, actually, bishop takes b8 is the best move. It's kind of weird, but looks like it's true, and I think that also shows you that this queen c1 probably isn't the best line for white. So bishop g3, just take out the bishop, fianchetto with g6. Yeah, be a little bit careful about all the pressure white can put on your king side. But this is such a sturdy construction with g6 and the bishop on g7 that normally you should be able to be okay, even if white tries to sacrifice something. Obviously, always try to calculate it to your best ability, but it really is a very solid setup. Then there's still e5, but that doesn't change anything. You just play d6, drop back the bishop, and I want to see if there's even if there are even other moves left. All right, knight e2. Yeah, I guess white wants to retake without getting his pawns doubled. Looks like you can play d6. Looks like you can also just take out the bishop. I don't think this knight is placed that well here, especially since we are planning to play d6 and e5 anyway. But first, we're going to create our fianchetto setup again. Yeah, and like I said here, it looks like it's even possible to play e5 immediately. Right, and I guess here the point is that after d takes, there is a double attack on b2, and you will white will lose this rook here. Anything else? Not really. Knight h3, I guess with the same ideas, and you can just take and do similar stuff like we saw before. And c3, yeah, you just give up the bishop and try to, I guess, clamp down on this e5 square, but this doesn't work so well, I think. So bishop d3, here. Yeah, I guess a combination of these moves would be pretty good. So here they say c5 immediately. Let's see if d5, then bishop h6. Yeah, once this pawn moves, it's always a bit weak. Can be attacked with moves like bishop h6 and queen to c7. For example, let's see if you can do this, and let's see if white does this. Oh, right, now I put my pawn in between, but let's say a castle instead. White castles, and see. Okay, I was going to say maybe I can attack this pawn and force g3, but first of all, the queen is covering the pawn, and looks like actually in this variation it is doing something useful. I was trying to make the point that maybe you can force white to play g3 and weaken his king position, but here, yeah, it's not such a good idea. So instead, after c5, you can just play d6 instead. This is quite original, I suppose. And after g3 there's a double attack on this pawn and this pawn. That's quite interesting. But yeah, on the other hand, if you see here, only one game, so I don't think you should worry too much about it. So to conclude, queen c1, not the best move. Immediately jump with your knight to h5. And if you saw, white can play a lot of stuff, but many things will transpose or lead to similar positions. So I think this is also not a line you should worry about. So that was it for this video. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment, and we'll see you maybe in one of the next ones.